I still remember the first day of that trip like it was yesterday. I had set out alone into the Canadian wilderness, eager to escape civilization for a while. My plan was to spend a week camping and hunting in the backcountry. Just me, my rifle, and the trees. The hike in was pleasant under a clear autumn sky. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth. By afternoon, I found a decent spot to make camp. A small clearing beneath tall cedars, near a babbling creek. I pitched my tent, built a fire pit, and settled in for the night, feeling confident. That first evening was calm and quiet. I sat by my campfire as dusk faded to night, listening to the fire crackle. Normally, the woods come alive after dark with chirping crickets or hooting owls, but here there was only silence. It struck me as a bit odd, too quiet, but I shrugged it off. Maybe the cool weather had everything laying low. I leaned back against a log, watching the stars blink into existence overhead. It was beautiful out there, and I felt lucky to be away from everything. I didn't know the silence was an omen of what was coming. Sometime after midnight, I crawled into my tent and zipped myself into my sleeping bag. The fire had burned low, just a soft orange glow through the tent wall. As I lay in the darkness, I noticed I could hear my own heartbeat. The stillness outside was absolute. Not a breath of wind, not a chirp or rustle. Total silence. I told myself I just wasn't used to it. Eventually I drifted off. I woke later to a faint scraping sound. My eyes snapped open in the darkness. I held my breath, listening. Scratch, scratch, crunch. Leaves, a footstep. It sounded like something moving just outside my tent. I thought maybe it was a bear or a fox. I quietly reached over and grabbed my flashlight and hunting knife, just in case. My hand was trembling slightly. There was a soft sniffing noise, and the nylon of the tent fabric rustled, like something was brushing against it. I clicked on the flashlight and aimed it at the tent wall. The sound stopped instantly, and I saw nothing. Everything outside was still. I waited, heart thudding, but the quiet held. After about a minute with no other noises, I convinced myself it must have been a raccoon or the wind. Eventually I managed to get back to an uneasy sleep. Morning light brought reassurance. The sun came up pale and cold, but hearing birds chirp and the creek trickle again made me breathe easier. I stepped outside to look for signs of night visitors. In daylight, the clearing looked normal. I found no tracks around the tent. I did notice something odd. On a nearby tree trunk, about shoulder height, 3 long scratch marks gouged the bark. They were fresh, as if made by something with claws. Black bears can scratch trees, I reasoned, trying not to freak myself out. I made breakfast and then set out to scout for game, determined to shake off the unease. As I roamed the woods that day, I realized the forest was empty. I didn't see any deer, rabbits, or even squirrels. It was as if every creature had vanished. The eerie quiet from last night lingered, broken only by my own footfalls. That emptiness gnawed at me. By late afternoon, I decided to head back to camp before nightfall, unnerved by the silence. I spent the last hour of daylight gathering plenty of firewood. If there was a large animal around, I wanted a big fire to keep it away. That second night, clouds covered the sky, making the forest pitch black beyond my campfire's glow. I sat wrapped in my jacket next to the fire, which I fed steadily to keep it roaring. Again, the wilderness around me was dead quiet. I tried humming a little tune, just to hear something besides my breathing. Around midnight, a long wail echoed through the woods. I jolted upright. It was a chilling cry that started low and rose high, then faded. The hair on my arm stood up. It didn't sound like any wolf or coyote I'd heard. It almost sounded human. I stood, gripping the rifle tightly. I was telling myself it had to be wind or an animal when it came again, louder and closer. A shrill, inhuman scream. My gut clenched hard. Seconds later, from somewhere to my left in the darkness, I heard a faint voice. "Help!" I whipped around, staring into the black woods beyond the firelight. The voice was thin and pleading. "Please, help me!" It sounded like a woman or a child. I couldn't tell which. But something about it was off, like it was imitating the words rather than truly crying them. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I called out, "Hello? Do you need help?" Only silence answered. I took a few steps toward the tree line, heart hammering. I dared not go far from the fire. I swept my flashlight in an arc. The beam cut into the darkness, illuminating gnarled branches and empty space. Then, off to my right, a sharp crack rang out, a stick snapping under weight. I swung the light toward the sound, and my stomach lurched. For an instant, two pale eyes reflected in the light from behind a tree, far too high off the ground for any normal animal. Then they vanished with a soft rustle of leaves. I stumbled backward and rushed to the safety of the fire. I threw another log on, sending sparks flying into the night. My hands were shaking. I kept the rifle pointed toward the dark trees. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. The rotten stench I'd noticed earlier briefly wafted through camp again, stronger now, like carrion left to rot. I spent the rest of that night with my back to the tent, eyes wide, scanning the shadows. I could feel something out there, watching me just beyond the fire's glow. Now and then, I'd hear a twig snap or leaves crunch softly in the blackness. I don't think I blinked until I saw the first gray light of dawn seeping through the trees. At sunrise, the forest slowly came back to life. A bird chirped and I almost cried with relief. I was exhausted and terrified, but I had made it through the night. I decided I was done with this trip. Whatever was out here, I wasn't sticking around to find out. I packed up camp in a hurry. As I did, I found massive footprints in the mud around my campsite. Barefoot tracks, but huge, with long toes like claws. They formed a circle around my camp, some coming within a few yards of my tent. Seeing that made my blood run cold. While I was huddled by the fire, something had been walking around, watching me. I slung on my pack and set off toward the trailhead at a near jog, caring about nothing except putting distance between me and that place. The woods felt endless on the way out. Every snap of a twig under my boots made me flinch. About a mile in, I heard soft footfalls behind me, crunching leaves in time with my steps. When I stopped, they stopped. When I sped up, so did they. I didn't dare investigate. I just hurried on, heart pounding. Roughly halfway back, as I hurried along the trail, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the trees to my right. A tall, lanky silhouette flitted between the pines. I froze, and the figure did too. It was maybe 8 feet tall, impossibly thin, with antlers or horns crowning its head. It stood there in the shadows, watching me. My mouth went dry. Slowly, I raised my rifle. Before I could even aim, it let out an ear-splitting shriek, the same nightmarish sound from before. I turned and ran. I tore through the forest, branches whipping at my arms and face. Behind me, something huge crashed through the brush, and that wailing cry cut through the air, driving me to sprint even faster. I didn't look back. I ran for my life. Finally, I burst onto the gravel parking area where my truck sat. I leapt inside, hands shaking so badly, I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, and I slammed on the gas. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. At the edge of the trees in broad daylight stood the gaunt, skeletal figure with antlers. Its pale eyes were fixed on me. It didn't chase. It just watched as I sped down the road. That creature seared into my memory. Back home, I tried to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe a sick bear. Maybe my imagination. But nothing fit. I know what I saw. I came face to face with something people only whisper about around campfires. The word Wendigo crossed my mind. A legendary flesh-eating spirit of the woods. And the thought alone sent a shiver through me. Legend or not, I know I saw something that shouldn't exist. Months have passed, but I still get nightmares about those eyes in the dark. And that horrible wail. I haven't been back to the deep woods since, and I doubt I ever will. The wilderness I once loved now feels tainted by that encounter. Sometimes in the dead of night, I'll jerk awake thinking I smell that rotten stench again, or hear a tap at my window. It's always just my imagination. At least I hope it is. So if you ever find yourself camping alone in the Canadian backcountry and the forest suddenly goes unnaturally quiet around you, leave. Don't question it. Just get out. I was lucky to make it out alive. Others might not be so lucky.